What is going on, everybody? And in this video, I'll provide you a state of the market and stock picks for April 4th, 2023. So that sounds like something you're interested in. Consider subscribing as we do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day or week ahead in this glorious market. So, the day. Interesting day nonetheless. The market did bounce because of the OPEC news essentially that came out over the weekend, cutting the barrels of oil being produced, which in the long term is not a good idea because if that could potentially start causing inflation to come back in energy. Did see quite a bit of movement in energy to the upside, which in turn does help push the market up temporarily. But again, you are dealing with a big issue because if we do start getting inflation to start rising, that means Powell will start having to increase rates from 25-point basis move to a 50-point basis move and potentially additional rate increases. And we've already seen what the current interest rates increasing at a rapid pace has been doing. And even though the banks are backed, that pot is only so big. All it will take is a number of banks to go under, and then this whole thing is going to buckle. But we do need a catalyst to actually have rate decreases. We need a big event for that to happen. So that is what's playing on in the background as of right now. As aside from that, to take that part out of the equation and look at it pure technical wise, we are at the top of essentially the top of the channel here. And so, in my opinion, I don't really think we have enough to really break out. There is not, there is too much unknown risk as of right now. Now, if this was a normal market and we just had like the one news event, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal. We could bounce back quickly, and I would agree with that. But considering that there is so much going on, uh, it is so uncertain that for us to just assume that we're going to go back is just, again, the probability is that is very unlikely. And now McDonald's as well has come out and they closed all corporate offices today, and apparently going to do some major layoffs. So that is also some really big news. And what has been really weird is that even with all these layoffs, stocks have been ripping as temporarily. These layoffs happen so that these companies can maintain some sort of profitability, but ultimately it hurts the growth of the company. And also understand, one of the biggest reasons that would cause a crash is when they actually start pricing in a recession. Now, again, you have a lot of it's strong and resilient from the bank side. There will be no recession. We're having a soft landing. You're hearing a lot of these different things, and the funny thing is people are very selective on what they want to hear as far as the markets ripping up, and the disinflation that Powell had originally mentioned when he talked about all these other different things coming into before we even started quantitative easing, and talking about inflation was transitory, and then that changed, and then understand that everything they've essentially said has been wrong. And so to believe him, why would you believe him now if previously before it was not? So even with all that being said, technical wise, just trying to essentially take away the thesis and look at it just pure technical wise. Again, we are hitting a part of the top of the channel. We are getting into an earnings mode, and so that's what we have to prepare for. And so the market itself, Tesla numbers came out over the weekend as well. Again, they just made over what was estimated. It really depends. There's a couple different estimations. Some of them actually came under, but nonetheless, the fact that they've slashed prices is not a good sign, right? Some people took that as a negative, which understandably, right? They've done extremely well, even given the circumstances. And so, even with that being said, Tesla started selling off pretty heavy this morning. It kind of lightened up this afternoon, but and then you also got Elon dealing with, essentially him pumping Dogecoin, which again he changed the Twitter logo to the Dogecoin logo, and then Dogecoin actually flew up today too, which was quite interesting. So it's been a very interesting day of what's been going on. But again, the index itself really hasn't moved. Again, I don't see the index really going crazy until we get some sort of information. This week really doesn't have a lot of information. We have core next week, and we have the banks following that. We do have non-farms on Friday. It is a short week. Normally in short weeks, you don't get a lot of volume in general. Right now, there's just really isn't a lot of volume. And, that's why the banks essentially put all that money, injected all that money into the banks. So there was no for essentially liquidity, right? And so very interesting time. But again, we are in a very tight range. My white lines, like I said before, are the daily range. And this thing is pinned extremely tight in here. Now, it can pop up to potentially 4,300. We talked about this. I don't see it get past this candle, to be honest. So I think you're essentially trapped in the 4,200. Whether we push up that high again today was a struggle. I think the only reason we even popped today was because of oil. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't start hitting that track down. But and again, it wasn't very unexpected from OPEC, right? And you have essentially a lot going on with China and Russia and them trading oil with the yen. And so that is a big concern. We also understand they've lost a lot of people in those countries. So for them, how big of an impact are they really going to have, right? And understand that their economies are suffering extremely bad. So they're trying to pull themselves out of their current situation. So we'll see. Time will tell what will happen. The dollar, again, is still very dominant right now. It's going to be hard to get off that standard unless, of course, people move away from oil and people move into backing currencies with potentially Bitcoin, right? You have to understand that China and India are one of the hugest backers of Bitcoin, right? They hold some of the biggest assets in crypto and when it comes to Bitcoin. So again, very interesting spot that we're currently in. Not really going to play into much of what's going on. Again, it's a short week. Our biggest info we're waiting for is next week, right? The pivotal data is next week, unless something drops overnight about banks, which again has been eerily quiet. They're trying to draw that out as much as possible. But the biggest pivotal event that we know of or are aware of is core next week, as well as with the banks on next Friday. We do have non-farms on Friday. Again, no real news, just kind of dried up. So you'll get movement based off of that. But again, the market's going to be slow anyway. The market's supposed to be closed on Friday. So again, we'll see what happens there. But as of right now, it's just a quiet day. We've had a lot of quiet days in this market, just given the circumstances. So the Bitcoin, again, holding. I think it's going to move in tandem with the market. Again, once something else happens, potentially we'll see what happens there. If something does happen in the general market sentiment, we have to see if this does decouple once that does happen. But continue to watch it. Again, the 30K mark is the ceiling, and then watching essentially the 25K mark for support. And then we'll go from there once we get some sort of news event. This is why I'm news event driven, especially in times like this, because we're waiting on information, right? You need information to move the market, especially when when there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. Tesla, like I said, numbers weren't great, so we sold off pretty heavy, holding the support here. Let's see if we can break below the 192 tomorrow. If it does break below, you do have some kind of like a speed bump roughly around the 185. But again, you got this big gap you need to fill. I would still see this coming down, at least down to here, at least the 178. And then, like I said, we'll see from there. There's support way down here at 140. You really don't want this thing breaking below this particular marker here, the 167, because then you got a pretty big drop, about a 20-point drop from that point if it does start getting that low. So we'll see again from that point. But as of right now, we'll see how we open. Again, your ceiling is sitting roughly here at the 208. So do we give it one more shot to the upside? Again, we are kind of getting earnings mode. I was expecting this to pull back. We'll see if things shoot back up and retest before a drop, or what the case is. Again, overnight sessions are really going to matter. News is going to matter, as the market has been very news deprived on a lot of different things aside from the OPEC stuff. The OPEC stuff, short term, maybe bullish, but long run, definitely not a good sign, especially when it comes to inflation. We can actually get into disinflation or stagflation, I should say, which is the worst of both worlds. And so just keep that in mind. And it looks like that could be what we're doing. And, interest rates are high. Everybody's still getting laid off. And inflation is still high, right? That's the worst of both worlds. So that's definitely not what we want. So we'll see what happens there. But nonetheless, BA Monster ripped back up, of course. And then it's being blocked by the 220. So if this thing really wants to continue, we'll see if it breaks over 220. Otherwise, again, you're looking back at the 193 for BA. And then we shall look at the banks. So JPM, again, kind of just stagnant, like most things. Again, as long as the banks aren't super volatile, you're not going to have like really huge moves in the market. So if these things, as long as they remain stable, we'll see what happens. Healthcare, I know, got a little bit of a run up today. You're seeing transitions into different industries as the market is trying to predict what is currently happening. So, but again, we shall see. GS, Goldman Sachs, like I said, it's got a nice pullback. Now, likewise, for this to be bullish, I do like the setup that this could be bullish. Same with BAC, right? It's sold off enough. This could potentially be bullish. That's a positive. So you do have some meat on the bone to start pushing up from the bank side. But again, you still have a crisis going on, right? That's all it's going to take is one bad news article and this thing could just sell off. So you have to be very careful. Again, this environment we live is extremely cautious environment. And again, there's no bull market till we break out of these ranges. And, you're not going day to day wondering what the next thing is going to happen to the market, right? So we'll see how we open. But again, kind of looking, still stuck in that 42K range. Otherwise, again, I think we're going to head back down to the 3,800. Again, very parabolic move here, but we're just the beginning of April, so we'll see what happens. Even looking at the monthly here, look at this real quick. Drew that over the weekend. Renew drawing. So again, your normalization would be around this particular point, anywhere from 3,200 to roughly the 36 or the 2,600. Again, I think the 26 low side of this zone is probably way too ambiguous, if you will. I think I'm looking more at the 32 and on the high side of the 20s. So we'll see what happens there. But nonetheless, this thing can continue to push up. But again, like I said, this parabolic moves needs to be fixed and corrected and normalized. And that's what the market is doing. As of right now, these cycles are necessary. So we'll see if this push up leads to a push down, and then potentially reverse back up for a stronger run as opposed to this. We don't want this and then just straight up, because that's pretty parabolic. But again, we'll see. So just my opinion. You've made it this far. I do appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a thumbs up. Until next time, you guys have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one.